The day I resigned, my boss stared at my letter as if I had just betrayed him. For 5 years, I had worked for the coldest man I had ever known. He never smiled, never asked about my family, and never stayed in the office longer than necessary. Yet somehow, when I finally told him I was leaving to find a wife and build a life of my own, something changed behind his icy eyes. I just didn't understand what it meant until much later. Before we continue, if you believe everyone deserves a second chance and that sometimes kindness can be hiding behind the hardest faces, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness for more emotional stories about second chances. My name is Daniel, and for 5 years I worked as the executive assistant to Adrian Cole, the founder of one of the most successful investment companies in the city. Adrian was rich, brilliant, disciplined, and almost impossible to understand. His employees called him the Ice King when he wasn't around. He could walk into a room and make everyone straighten their backs without saying a word. His instructions were short, his expectations impossible, and his personal life was practically non-existent. I knew when he drank his coffee, which meetings he hated, which clients made him impatient, and exactly how he liked every document arranged. But I knew almost nothing about the man beneath the expensive suits. For 5 years, I became the person who kept his world running. I booked his flights, prepared his presentations, reminded him about meetings, and handled emergencies before he even knew they existed. I stayed late more nights than I could count. I missed birthdays, family dinners, and even my younger sister's graduation once because Adrian had an international presentation the next morning. I never complained because the salary was excellent, and I had promised myself that one day I would save enough money to leave the corporate world and create a family of my own. Then, at 32, I realized something terrifying. I had spent 5 years helping someone else build his empire while my own life had barely moved. One rainy evening, I sat alone in my apartment eating dinner from a plastic container. The silence felt heavier than ever. I looked at the empty chair across from me and suddenly understood what I wanted. I didn't want another promotion. I didn't want another bonus. I wanted someone to come home to. I wanted a wife who would ask how my day was, someone whose hand I could hold when life became difficult, someone with whom I could build a home that felt warm instead of empty. The next morning, I walked into Adrian's office with my resignation letter. He read it twice. Then he looked at me. "You're leaving?" I nodded. I told him I wanted to find a wife, settle down, and finally live for myself. For the first time in 5 years, Adrian looked genuinely stunned. He leaned back in his chair and remained silent for so long that I wondered whether I had made a terrible mistake. Then he asked when I planned to leave. "Friday." He nodded slowly. "Then Friday it is." I expected anger. Instead, something strangely sad appeared in his expression. My final 3 days passed quietly. Adrian didn't give me any extra work. He didn't criticize me. He simply watched me pack my desk, and on Friday evening, when I was ready to walk out, he handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph of a woman. I looked at him, confused. "She works at a charity foundation I support," he said. "Her name is Clara. She's kind. She values family. And she once told me she wanted to marry a man who understood that love is more important than money." I almost laughed. "Are you trying to arrange my marriage?" "No," he replied. "I'm trying to give you a chance I never gave myself." Those words stayed with me. I met Clara the following week. She wasn't glamorous or wealthy. She worked long hours helping abandoned children and elderly people who had no families. She had tired eyes, a gentle smile, and a habit of listening before speaking. Our first meeting lasted 2 hours. By the third meeting, I realized I was thinking about her even when she wasn't there. But something bothered me. Adrian kept appearing in unexpected places. At the charity center. At a small cafe where Clara and I sometimes met. At a hospital where Clara volunteered on weekends. I began wondering if he was secretly controlling everything. Then one evening, I confronted him. "Why are you doing this?" He stood beside the hospital window, looking down at the city lights. "Because I know what happens when you wait too long to live." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. Instead, he told me about his younger sister, Emily. She had died 7 years earlier. She had been the only person who could make Adrian laugh. After their parents died, Emily became his family, his best friend, and the one person who believed he was capable of loving someone. Then she became sick. Adrian had been building his company at the time. He convinced himself that money could solve everything. He worked constantly, believing he could pay for the best treatment, the best doctors, the best care. But Emily didn't need another expensive doctor. She needed her brother. Near the end, she asked him to sit beside her. He was too busy. By the time he arrived, she was unconscious. She died the next morning. Adrian never forgave himself. That was the secret behind the Ice King. His coldness wasn't arrogance. It was grief. For years, he had punished himself by refusing to become attached to anyone. He believed that if he never loved again, he could never lose anyone again. I finally understood why he had been helping me. He wasn't trying to control my future. He was trying to make sure I didn't make the same mistake. Months passed, and Clara and I grew closer. We had disagreements, difficult days, and moments when we wondered whether we were moving too quickly. But unlike my old life, there was laughter now. There were shared meals, evening walks, and quiet conversations that lasted until midnight. One evening, Clara and I returned to the charity center after a long day. She looked exhausted but happy. She took my hand. Then she whispered something that stopped me completely. "I could be that." I looked at her. "That what?" "The wife you left your old life to find." My eyes filled with tears. For 5 years, I had worked for a man who seemed to have everything but had lost the one thing money could never buy. And now, because of him, I had found the life I thought I was searching for somewhere else. A year later, I married Clara. Adrian attended the wedding alone. He stood at the back of the room, wearing the same serious expression he had worn for years. But when he saw me holding Clara's hand, something changed. He smiled. It was small. Almost invisible. But it was real. After the ceremony, I walked toward him and thanked him. He shook his head. "No, Daniel. You saved me too." I didn't understand. He looked toward the wedding guests and quietly said, "Watching you choose love reminded me that Emily was right. Life was never meant to be survived. It was meant to be lived." That night, Adrian went home to an apartment that had been empty for years. But for the first time, he didn't turn on the television or open his laptop. He opened an old box containing photographs of Emily. And he cried. Not because he had finally forgotten her. Because he finally allowed himself to remember her without running away from the pain. Sometimes the coldest people are not heartless. Sometimes they are simply carrying a wound nobody ever took the time to understand. And sometimes the person who helps you find your happiness is someone who secretly wishes they had found theirs sooner. If this story touched your heart, please support this video with a like, share it with someone who may need to hear this message, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness. Your small engagement can help this story reach someone who needs hope today. And before you go, comment, "Love deserves a second chance," if you believe that even broken hearts can learn to live, love, and hope again. Because sometimes, the person who looks like ice on the outside is simply someone waiting for a reason to feel warm again.